Probably shouldn't be recording this early in the morning, but whatever. Just woke up, but we'll make it work. So, my family was having like this 4th of July barbecue, And during that time, my uncle was reciting how the night before he saw a bunch of like kids with like sparklers running around in the street like they got no sense. And he was so tempted to just like go out his window and just tell them like, get off the road, you crazy kids. Just like a stereotypical old man would. And it was my aunt who actually pointed out how when he was their age, he was the one running around with sparklers in people's yards and having old men yell at him saying, get off my lawn! And he was like, yeah, well, I at least will be smart enough not to go down the street, But as funny as that story is, it got me thinking of another time about how my mom was telling me how she was listening to like a radio program. Either it was a radio or podcast or something she just had in the background, and it was about these two guys discussing like the political situation. And one of them was like, I feel like we give a lot of kids crap these days for like being part of like some kind of like liberal agenda, but if you really think about it, we weren't that different when we were their age, We were just a bunch of hippies, like going off on all these drugs, like smoking pot, fucking everything, like trying to tear down the old established rules that our parents were doing. And that's kind of what kids are doing today, And his partner in the podcast was like, yeah, but I feel like as I got older, I shifted more towards just focusing on like family values, Again, it kind of points out how the boomers, like the people we associate as being like these super conservative old people, they were the liberalistic troublemakers when they were young, back in their day. And this is not a new phenomenon to the modern era either. With the parents of the boomers, they went through a similar cycle too. They're associated as like the family from like the 50s who kind of like codified the stereotypical nuclear family unit and established the American family values and super traditionalism and stuff. But in the 30s and 40s, they were the same teenagers and kids going to bars and speakeasies during Prohibition era, especially the women of that generation. They were called flapper girls, and they were completely destroying like society's expectations of women back then, because back then women didn't go to bars. Like that was seen exclusively as a male thing. But here they were going out to bars and wearing skirts shorter than anything that was allowed or seen appropriate at that time, dancing around with these like at that time super provocative dancers on the dance floor. Like that was huge back in the day. But those same women were the same ones that became like the docile housewives of like the 40s and 50s. And it goes back even further than that, because if you look at various like folklore and myths across the world, there's this common pattern of the super spunky young people rebelling against older people. Especially in mythology, there's this common trope around the world of like either a king or some kind of father deity who foresees his son or children or whatever, like trying to overthrow him. So he tries to orchestrate their own death to prevent it, which paradoxically causes his prophecy to be fulfilled and he falls anyways. But again, there's the appearance of like a conflict between the old and new generations. So this just seems to be a condition of being human that seems to be consistent through all ages. So why does this happen? And how does it happen? I think this is a question that needs to be asked, because if we can figure out exactly why and how this happens, I think it will allow us to better communicate with the Conservative Party. Instead of just like telling them like, yeah, a bunch of like old crusty bastards who just want us all to die, like that's not going to get us anywhere. It hasn't gotten us anywhere in the past like 40 years, So we need to try something different. We need to like understand the other side instead of just trying to yell at them, okay? So how do young people go from the super liberal and free party into conservatives? Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors into play that could cause this, and I'm not going to like pretend I'm going to have like the big definitive answer to all of this, but I have some ideas, and I think I have identified at least a couple factors that heavily contribute to this, and it can at least get the discussion rolling at least. I kind of like came to this conclusion by observing how a lot of parents seem to act. Parents seem to be like the starting point as to when this transformation begins. You'll notice that it's always like parent groups and like these overprotective moms who are like, protect the children whenever they want to like back some kind of like political agenda. They say it's for the kids, but it's really to back their own ideological beliefs. But at the same time, I don't think it should be completely discredited that these parents are trying to look out for their kids' safety and well-being, no matter how ridiculous the threat may be, whether it be rock music, video games, rapping, or fucking D&D. Like, oh god, that was an embarrassing time. Why do parents like perceive like such insignificant things as like giant threats to their children? Well, as someone who is about to be a father himself, I think I'm starting to understand why that happens. My daughter isn't even here yet, and maybe it's just my anxiety, but if we have any parents listening, tell me if this is the case. But my mind is already just like going through constant types of scenarios on how this child could like freaking die, of like, no matter how absurd it may seem. Like, I could just like turn my head like 1 second and all of a sudden they're out in the road and they get run over by a car. Like, when they get older, they fall into the wrong crowd and suddenly they're starting to like get involved in drugs, or they get snatched up by someone, and it's just it's honestly scary. Like, this is the daughter I've always wanted, and in addition to being excited and being scared of being a father, is also scared about all the things that could possibly happen and the things that are out of my control. And that's just such a terrifying thought for any parent, I imagine. And it's so much different from how they used to be when they were younger, because when you're young and you're out on your own, you can afford to be a lot more reckless, you know? Because you're looking after no one but yourself, and because you're young and you haven't really had like a full life experience yet, you don't know how much danger there is out there, so you're just more willing to just throw yourself into danger. That's why teenagers especially are like so reckless and think they're invincible, because they haven't gotten hurt enough, so they just do stupid shit. And that's normal. That's just part of being a teenager. Sometimes the only way you're going to learn is if you end up hurting yourself doing it, as long as it doesn't outright kill you or cripple you. Like, sometimes you just gotta let teenagers learn the hard way, you know? But yeah, when you're young, you're fearless. And I think it's also why activists, well, a lot of activists, I should say, especially activists who come from privilege, they're young people, because to be part of an activist group is inherently throwing yourself into danger. Because again, you're going against like the establishment, you're going against people who want to like silence you. You got police, you got the government, you got all these different hate groups. It's scary and terrifying stuff, but young people who have the energy and the courage and recklessness, let's be honest, to want to like fight against it, they can do that because they're at a point in their life where they have no one else to worry but themselves, essentially. But all of that changes as soon as you become a parent, or you become part of a family or whatever, or you have your own family, rather, I should say. Everyone's part of a family. Like, if you have a wife and a child who, or no, I shouldn't say, if you have a partner and a child who are now relying on you, suddenly you can't just be throwing yourself at anything anymore. You have, because if something were to happen to you, now you're leaving your partner and your child to fend for themselves now, and that's going to be so much harder for them. So now you have to, instead of just like tackling anything with reckless abandon, you have to think like, is this really going to be worth my time to risk my life and the life of my family? It forces you to be a lot more pragmatic and analytical of what kind of conflicts you want to be involved in, what battles you choose to pick, you know? And a lot of times, most of those things, parental figure would choose not to get involved because they now have someone else who relies on them. The sad truth is, especially for people who come from privilege, activism is something that becomes a lot lower on their priority list. Because the sad truth of the matter for people from privilege is that our plight, whether we succeed or like continue to struggle, it doesn't affect them. And I think a lot over time they may see it as a losing battle, or just they get so tired from constantly being grounded down and just seeing very little progress as a reward, that they just like slowly drift away from it and choose to focus on things they have more quick and immediate control over. So that leaves the only people left fighting are the people who are still actively affected by the troubles of society. So I think that's why like a lot of like white people become increasingly conservative over time, even if they started as from a place more on the liberal side. And when you become a parent, you suddenly become a lot more acute to danger. Your senses are a lot more heightened for longer periods of time because, again, you're trying to make sure your little crotch goblin doesn't get himself like chewed up or something. Because of this hyper vigilancy, that's why so many parents are just so eager to jump on anything that may pose even a possible threat to their children, even if it's something absolutely ridiculous like video games, or I don't know, like name like a stupid thing that parents were like complaining about down in the comments. I'm sure there's like hundreds of them. Notice how politicians like to use the save the children argument to try and like corral parents behind whatever cause they're trying to advocate for. And these causes usually fall on conservative lines, because that's the key to all this. Fear is the driving engine that powers conservatism. Fear of things changing, fear of things going out of your control, fear of things you don't understand, fear to try and like keep things the way they are. Because humans by nature like it when things are like consistent, you know? But especially when you become a parent and you have to like, and you have like a schedule so you know where your kid is going to be at all times. And also when you become older and become a lot more fragile, and suddenly the smallest thing can possibly like break something or send your entire day into spiral, because it takes a lot more effort just to do simple things like going to the store. So you want that consistency. And that is the promise that conservatism tries to protect, your safety and your consistency. And there's nothing that threatens consistency more than a bunch of young people out on the streets with protest signs shouting about something or other, supposedly causing riots, which now suddenly endangers you and your neighborhood and the people around you. It suddenly becomes from like just living your own business to now just being like, oh, we need to get all these rowdy young people to stop doing whatever it is they're doing so our neighborhoods can be safe and stable again. A lot of people want to think that conservatism is just like blind racism. And believe me, some of that is true for some people, but I feel like it's a lot lower number than people realize. I feel like it's the exception rather than the rule. Now, in the mind of the conservative, they're trying to protect something. They're trying to protect the sanctity of their neighborhood. They're trying to protect the sanctity of family values. Because there you go. Once again, there's that family thing that comes up again. In their minds, the liberals are the aggressors, trying to stir up trouble when there didn't need to be, because everything was just fine until y'all came along. And pointing out how like they benefit from the sufferings of others, and that makes them uncomfortable, so they don't want to confront that. They'd rather just say like, nah, you're just causing up trouble for no reason, let us go back to how things were. I really need to stop talking to them. I need to stop portraying them like that, because it's not fair. Because again, these people are just scared, and when you realize that these people are just terrified, you kind of have just a bit more sympathy for them, you know? I'm not trying to like excuse some of the things they do and advocate for, because no matter how sympathetic like your viewpoint is, intentions don't matter. What matters is the end effect. And the truth about conservatism is that they are advocating for things that bring actual harm to a lot of people, whether it be women with... Did you hear how Texas is trying to like have bounties for people trying to like get abortions? Like, that's fucking crazy, yo. They're trying to control women. They're trying to like control minority groups. They're trying to control LGBT groups. Like, they're just trying to like exterminate the freedoms of these people, and they do so thinking that it's going to somehow protect their own families and their own neighborhoods. But that is why we need to understand that viewpoint, because instead of just shouting at them, we can say like, yo, guys, we're not trying to destroy anything. We understand that you're trying to protect yourselves. We are also trying to protect ourselves from other threats. And they're like, wait, you're trying to protect yourself? Protect yourself from what? And then suddenly, a dialogue is opened. Suddenly, now you can explain to them the systemic racism, the oppression, the history of it, how it has lingered on for like generations, and the complex web that everyone ends up participating in. But you do it in a much more gentle way, where suddenly not everything's pinned on them. They're no longer bad guys. They're just hapless victims, and all this just as, well, not entirely, but like, it opens the door for you to like explain how this came to be and why this is a threat to us. And suddenly they go from like hostility to like sympathy, like, oh my god, I had no idea things were like this for you guys. Like, how can I help? You know? Instead of just trying to go on the aggressive and saying like, no, you're the problem. You're just a bunch of old crusty bastards who just wants to die. They can go like, see, these people are dangerous. They're trying to say like we're gonna let people die. We're not bad people. Clearly they must be the bad people. And they become more defensive and they become more emboldened in their efforts to try and like stomp us out or try to silence us or to try to paint us as the bad guy. And there are no bad guys in this conflict. There's just a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of fear, a lot of anger that's being put in the wrong places. And we just need to recognize each other's humanity if we're going to like fix any of this, alright? So I feel like the endings of these videos are getting a little repetitive, but like, I don't know, y'all. The fact that there's so many grown adults who can't remember to do like basic kindergarten shit, like the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated, like, if our own president ex-president, I should say, if our own ex-president wasn't able to do that, then maybe y'all should be hammered that in as grown people, because clearly y'all didn't get the memo the first time, but... Okay, so this is an extra bit I'm adding at the very end after I've edited everything and such. So, I want to say, if there's anyone from the Conservative or Republican Party that's still watching at the very end, I just want to say, thank you guys so much for sticking around and hearing me out. Like, I appreciate your input so much and that you're so open to, like, hear from the other side, you know? And whatever I say here is not meant to, like, offend you or, like, try and degrade you in any way. Like, I'm just coming from the point that we all just need to start learning from each other, you know? So I come with nothing but peace and friendship in mind. And again, thank you for even listening. And for making this far, there's a question I want to... Well, not a question. There's a message I want to personally deliver to you guys. I get it, okay? I understand that not all of you are racist and bigots and sexist and homophobes or whatever else is being thrown at you. I know you guys are just frustrated that you're constantly being called at by your friends, family, co-workers, on social media. Like, it's coming from everywhere, and you feel like it's not true. And I know you're just tired of it, okay? I get it. You're just as frustrated as the rest of us. That being said, I wanted to personally ask you, why do you think people are calling you these things? I'm going to give yourself a minute to like think about that. Why would people be calling you these things in the first place? I'm going to try and like provide a possible answer for your sake. From my observation, well, I'm going to claim it's an observation and an opinion to protect myself, but I'm going to claim that it's the fact that there's people in the Republican and Conservative Party who are in fact bigots. They are very open about it, they are proud about it, and they actively advertise that they are Republican and Conservative. And the fact of the matter is that your figureheads and most of the people in your party do nothing to distance yourself from these people. You don't see people like trying to like actively call these people out. You don't see people saying like, no, we don't stand those people. This is not what represents our party. Like, you do nothing. You kind of just let them. You kind of just let them say their hate speech, you know. And because you're complacent in it, we have no choice but to assume that you believe in those same things. The truth of the matter is that the liberals are not your enemies. You want to know who the real danger to you is? It's the people that are making you look bad. It's the KKK. It's the neo-Nazis. It's the batshit crazy conspiracy theorists who tried to raid the White House. It's the anti-vaxxers. It's all these evangelicals trying to bomb hospitals and kill gay people. These are the real threat to you because they are making you look bad. These are the people that are associating with you, and in turn, like, this is what it looks like you're endorsing. And you guys aren't doing anything about it. And I know there's going to be some people who are going to respond saying, like, no, we don't tolerate these people. We do try to kick them out. We don't endorse these people. Well, I'm glad you think that way, but from the outset, not enough is being done because you still invite these people to your circles. When fucking Borat infiltrated your Trump rally, you guys did nothing. And to the people who were like having Nazi salutes, you did nothing
when they were singing along to the hate speech. You guys just sat there with a confused Pikachu face, and you didn't even boo him off stage. You didn't do anything until the rug had been pulled underneath you and you realized y'all had played yourselves. You people are the butt of these kind of jokes because you just let these people in your circles. And you do nothing until it's too late or until it becomes like too much of an embarrassment. You do nothing to punish these people for their embarrassing behavior. The liberals are not your enemy, because I'm going to tell you some secrets about the Liberal Party, and I'm going to claim that this is my opinion piece to protect myself, but as someone who's been in the Liberal Party for all my life, who's had family in it, who's been in and out of social circles, both online and offline, who's had friends, family, I've watched so many YouTubers in a circle, I go on so many different Reddit boards, I'm actively part of like the liberal quote-unquote agenda, and from my observations, from my experiences, there is no liberal agenda because liberals are not organized enough to have an agenda to begin with. The truth, I'm not going to say truth because the fact of the, from my observations, the Liberal Party is an absolute clusterfuck of all these different subgroups in constant infights with each other over absolutely stupid shit. Black people, we cannot get our shit together because A, we are just struggling to survive every day against society, against police, against other black people, and we cannot fully comprehend the very systems that have put us in this place to begin with, so we just can't get our shit together. Feminists, they're constantly fighting with the LGBT group because they somehow think that trans people are destroying womanhood, and immigrants aren't participating at all because, again, they are also trying their best to stay out of trouble so they can stay in this fucking country. And no matter how much the liberals tout about how much social change they want to bring out, from what I can tell, there is no actual plan on how to exactly do that. Everyone's just in like a dick measuring contest as to who's suffering the most and trying to prioritize like their needs over the other subgroups. And the people who are trying to unify all the groups, who do have a plan, who are trying to actually do something, instead of trying to prop them up, everyone else is just more concerned about canceling random e-celebrities on Twitter over stupid shit, okay? Like, as a party, we are not perfect, okay? Despite how much good we do, we have our own vices, and we can be just as incompetent and inept in our own uniquely shit way, okay? So we are not the threat to you, okay? The people who are a threat to you are the people making you look bad. So if you want people to stop calling you racist, sexist, homophobes, and whatever, then you need to start policing your own people and start removing those people who are creating that image to begin with, okay?
I need to stop being angry. I need to stop being angry. It's not healthy for any of us, but yeah, I just need to have breakfast, you know? I need to eat. I'm so hungry, guys.